say this book took me on an adventure that I have not recovered from yet. It's called Until the Last Dog, a memoir, one man's lifelong journey to Alaska with his dogs by Rob Downey. It doesn't seem to be a self-published book because any publisher would be proud to have this book on their list, and anybody needs to have it on their shelf. Rob, you are so brave. That's all I can say. You raced with these dog teams for years and years, but the stories in the book of the jeopardy that you encountered, and yet you kept on doing it. Do you consider yourself a risk taker beyond being just a dog lover? How many times were you going to let the dogs run off with the sled and you wind up with broken bits and pieces of yourself and drag yourself back to civilization? Are you a risk taker or are you just blind to risk?
I didn't know that I'm a risk taker. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to know when to quit.
The stories are incredible. I guess the first thing that I want to bring up is that I've been aware of your dog food, Annamaet. It's named after your grandma, right?
No, my
Your
mom.
mother. I'm sorry, your mother. And the dog food was developed so you could have the healthiest working dogs possible. And I think most people, if they know anything about the dog sports, know that dogs who pull sleds in the bitter cold, they can't do it unless they have the most amazing nutrition. And that's like a big part of people with performance dogs. What what did you I'm sorry to be tongue-tied, but you not only had this passion for the dogs and put together a team from a ragtag bunch of other dogs that maybe didn't work out for other people, but you understood early on that nutrition was so important and you set out, look who's in the background. Hi, Kai. Oh, he's camera shy. Now he went to the other side of the couch. You have so many cool dogs. That is not one of your sled dogs. That's your dock diving dog. You realized early on that without the best nutrition, these dogs couldn't do this extraordinary job. And you changed your whole career focus early in life to clinical nutrition for dogs. Was that's something which has now informed your whole life, your whole family's life. What do you think took you from just not looking for good nutrition, but making good nutrition? They're very different things.
It started off, as you mentioned, when I went away to college, I started to rescue sled dogs, right? And one day, one of my lead dogs was having difficulty getting out of her house. Her back end was stiff. And then the next day it was worse. So I rushed her to the vet. And after extensive testing, they determined she was selenium deficient, which is an essential mineral we all need. And so I changed the diet. Not only did she get better, but the whole dog team got better. And that was really my aha moment. And I realized this is what I want to do is study nutrition the rest of my life. Because honestly, I was born and raised with dogs. And all I've ever wanted to do is work with dogs. In fact, I hate to say it, but I think I get along better with dogs than I do with people.
Oh,
Right.
you make that clear in the book, but so many of us that are dog crazy, even if we think we're just fine in the social sphere of humans, we'd really rather be with dogs. But when you say you'd rather be with dogs, you mean like a pack of dogs, a lot of dogs, a lot of dogs, all of them working with each other and with you. I know there is a kind of pushback from pet dog owners to the Alaskan Iditarod type sled dog races. What you did is very different. Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, the Iditarod, which is what most people think of as sled dog racing, is a 1,000-mile race across Alaska. And it takes about 8 to 10 to 12 days. And they sleep outside, and the average speed is only 5 to 7 miles an hour. But there's actually a bigger segment of the sport and actually older, which is called sprint mushing, where
Yes.
the average speed is 20 to 25 miles an hour. So the dogs are running full speed in distances, depending on the size of the dog team, might be 8 to 20 miles, say. So what I like to tell people is then every night I get to sleep in a warm building, as do my dogs, right?
Yes. Yes, it's really important. It's such a difference, and I didn't realize it. I knew about your dog food, and I knew it had been developed for sled dogs, but I somehow thought it was those Iditarod style dogs who some of us with pet dogs are a little queasy about because they run them for such a long time and there's vets at every stop. And if the dogs are injured or semi-injured in any way, they're taken out of the pack. But they do sleep on chains in the snow for all those days. And there are people that think that is even call it cruel. I don't necessarily think that because the dogs have been acclimated to it their whole life, but I love what you do and the way you write about it in your book because these are races that take place in a kind of a reasonable amount of time, although I don't think what you did was reasonable in terms of danger. Can you talk about the fact that you didn't really have brakes or steering other than your lead dog? And I think that is the story that comes across over and over in Until the Last Dog. That one dog of yours was a genius. She was so brilliant, but you and she almost had ESP.
Yeah. I've always believed that dogs can read people better than we can, right? And I
Yes.
often said that if somebody comes around me and my dog distrusts them, I distrust them, and there's a reason why, right? There's something they give off that doesn't make me comfortable with them. And so dogs have always been a good judge of people. And when you're out racing in a sled dog team, you have no control. You have
I
it.
didn't know that. So you're saying, but we don't know that. We people that are just watch you with our mouths, you have all these dogs that are harnessed together. And only the lead dog is at 20, 25 miles an hour is making extraordinary decisions about how to bend slightly left or slightly right. And you're just along for the ride on some level,
Oh,
except for the ESP.
yeah, you do have a break. You do have a break if
Right.
you, but there's no rain, so it's all by voice. And the other thing is we never run just one leader. We always have two leaders.
Okay. Yes.
So you could look at that two ways. You could either have two dogs that are going to make the same decision or one dog that's going to be wrong. And
That's
so,
the joy of this book, Rob. You're so humble about it. Yeah, one of them could make the wrong decision, and now I'm wrapped around a tree. These brakes, the way you talk about them, okay, you have brakes, no steering. Who would want to drive a vehicle of any kind, leaving apart the fact that living, breathing, feeling, sentient creatures are your engine? And only have brakes, no steering. And then it seemed in some of these anecdotes, which are amazing, there's you describe them so well that even the brakes didn't always work. When you have that much dog power and enthusiasm, the brakes are like, yeah, never mind.
yeah. You got to remember that sometimes we might be hooking up to 16 dog teams, right? So if
Yeah.
you have 16 dogs and the average weight is over 60 pounds and they're traveling at 20 miles an hour plus, and they see a deer or a rabbit, now you have extra incentive. So you have to have pretty much control over those leaders. And a good leader really is born. They're not, obviously you train them, but I've always felt the best leaders are they're born to be leaders.
And it was interesting to me that your greatest one was a girl. I just didn't know that female dogs would necessarily be the leaders of a pack. And in terms of us thinking of dogs, boy dogs being, I don't know, more the guy.
I know there's going to be a lot of men in this audience that are not going to, but my best leaders traditionally were females. And you need to understand that although these are pack animals, it's not like they're fighting to be the leader. And so it's the dog that you really connect with. And honestly, we've had mostly there were females that were the best leaders. And till the very end, then I had two brothers that were great leaders, but they were kings of the hill. And we always laughed that when it came time to retire them, they'd have to be retired as a pair
Yeah.
because they intimidated every other dog around them. So they tolerated each other like brothers, but they wouldn't tolerate anybody else. So
The stories are incredible. The stories about the moose. Wow. Wow. These seem like stories from the ancient times that I felt like I was sitting around a campfire with you and you're talking about your great grandfather's day and the moose and what happened, but it happened to you. Aren't you the guy that everybody wants to hear stories from? You said that your late sister is the one who said, Rob, you got to do this, put this in a book. But a lot of people think they have great stories. They're really not great at all. They're like the time on the golf course that, I don't know, a raccoon ate my ball. These stories are so incredible. The moose stories in particular.
Yeah, that is the calling card, and I end up having to tell that moose story everywhere I go. People don't realize until maybe you go to the parks out west, but they will tell you the single most dangerous animal you're going to see here isn't a grizzly bear, it isn't a timber wolf, it's a cow moose with a calf. And
Yes.
they're very protective. And so when you're in Alaska, that's always the concern is running into a moose on the trail. Because think about it. We're grooming the trail, so it's a hard packed trail. We're trimming back the willows, which in the cold weather, an adult moose will eat about 40 pounds of willows a day, which will fill a 55-gallon trash can. So we make a virtual salad bar for moose. And why wallow through chest deep snow when I could walk down the dog trail and from the salad bar, right?
Yeah.
So,
And not know that coming careening around the corner is this 25-mile-an-hour blur of dogs and human.
right. Yeah, and that's another difference with the Iditarod. If you're only traveling 5 to 7 miles an hour, you might have a better chance of seeing them. Whereas if
Yeah.
you come
Yeah.
blindly around the corner at 20 plus miles an hour, you're into them before you realize that they're even there.
I think that your wife is very brave because she met you early on. You were in college, and she would send you off or wave you off on these adventures, and you'd come back broken and bruised. That moose, you tried to save your dogs by making a lot of noise and flapping your arms, and the moose said, "Really? Seriously?" and trampled you, stomped you.
Yeah, she broke all my ribs, tore the cartilage in my sternum, fractured my elbow. My one hand was swollen up like a boxer's glove. The surgeon figured I was trying to block her blows as she stomped at me. And these wildlife biologists that tell you if you're ever attacked by a wild animal that just play dead, trust me, they've never been attacked because it's humanly impossible not to defend yourself.
Of course, yes. And then these stories, and there's others where you've been gravely injured, but you're alone on a trail. In one case, the dogs ran off with the sled. They weren't bad dogs, they were just dogs on a sled. They didn't know you weren't on it. And you had to crawl and grope through extreme conditions back to some house or hut or something. It's, oh, Rob, I guess you lived to tell the tale because you wrote the book, but they're very disturbing. If I was your wife, can we just do something else for fun?
And then we have our kids do it, right?
Yes.
So
And then
one
you
of
get your kids into the dog food company. It's like a three-generation company, still privately owned, which is pretty rare because you've been very successful. And a lot of private companies have been bought out by bigger companies. But you make it clear early on that while you don't call out any individual brand names, you didn't have much respect for the ingredients being used by commercial pet food companies. So you teamed up with one of the grandfathers of pet nutrition at the University of Pennsylvania Veterinary School, which, as you point out, is now called PennVet. And he was your mentor, and he helped you years ago come up with formulas that were for dogs that, particularly in cold climates, needed to keep their strength. That's something you've stayed true to. And I think it's really quite remarkable that you're into a third generation and sticking to your guns, so to speak, and not compromising any of the ingredients. You got to give yourself a pretty big pat on the back for that. You could cash out for millions of dollars and let somebody who puts a lot of TV ads on just eat up your company, so to speak. That's not who you are.
that's exactly right. But you need to understand that these dogs literally saved my life. So I am passionate about it, and I named the company after my mom. And to sell out now to a VC firm or an investment firm, I think I'd get the proverbial smack in the back of the head from up above, right? You
Yeah,
know,
and that's one of the things I have celebrated in my work and particularly on this show. The companies that are founded with passion and knowledge and intelligence, and the idea of diluting that passion and diluting those formulas and diluting that seriousness about where you get your ingredients and how you put them together would be to betray everything you are. And I think that's something that pet owners, once they hear it, they get it.
people don't understand, but every ingredient in that side panel comes in at least 4 different quality levels. So I
Yeah.
could take one of my
Yeah.
exact recipes and just go to cheaper ingredients and cut
Yes.
between $8 and $16 off a bag. The other thing is, so many of these companies that were family run are now being purchased. And what happens is all of a sudden now the investors are trying to get their money back. And if I
Yes.
could tell you a perfect example of it is I had a friend that was selling vitamins and minerals to the pet industry. And when he would bid on a particular family run company, for each one, he'd have to put country of origin, purity levels, any recalls, any preservatives, the whole list of everyone, right?
Yep.
That company gets bought out by a venture capital firm, goes back to bid on it the next year. There's one line, price. They don't
Yes.
care where it's from, they don't
Yes.
care anything, they just want price. He's since left the industry because he couldn't take it.
It's really important for owners to hear this. You guys are holding the line against pet food becoming like the Gatorade and chips aisle in the supermarket. So I think it's really important that we celebrate a company that did it for the right reasons in the right way. And there's no point in doing it for you unless you do it that way. I celebrate you. And the stories in this book about you developing the pet food and working with, was it Dr. Kenyon?
Kronfeld.
I'm horrible on names.
Okay.
Um, it's fabulous. You worked with one of the early serious nutritionists, not someone even as a veterinarian who
Right.
sold out his veterinary license to put his name on the masthead of a venture capital owned commercial pet food company, which means that, as far as I can tell, I don't know where their veterinary training comes in. It's like they're going to rubber stamp stuff. It's not going to hurt a dog or a cat, but is it going to make them thrive? That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, that really is. And I've been blessed to be surrounded by tremendous people. Even as an undergraduate at Ohio State, Dr. Tisnick was one of the leading
Talk
nutritionists.
about that.
And
Yeah.
then he leads me to Dr. Kronfeld, and
Yes.
it's just been a natural progression. And we're proud of what we do. And one of the reasons I can stay family owned is that now we do have the second generation firmly entrenched in key positions, and we have the third generation running around the office. Our sales continue to grow, and but honestly, part of the reason you don't see us heavily marketed or big TV commercials is people can only afford to spend so much. Our idea is you can either put your money into the marketing and advertising or actually into the quality of the product. And
Yes.
we've chosen to do that. So we've often been described as the best kept secret in the pet food industry.
Interesting. I would say that because I actually met your son, Alex, when I was at the pet conference. I was like, and it was really cool because there was one of your sleds on display with a dummy of you on it. And I'm like, wow, that doesn't look like an Iditarod sled because it's a totally different kind of sled than the Iditarod. It's lighter and just different, obviously, in a lot of ways. But I thought if you have sled dogs, the only way they can do that job is with the right nutrition. Obviously, they might also need, I don't know, a chiropractor or something from time to time when you get home. I don't know. But certainly without the right nutrition, they don't even have the stamina, much less the skeletal and joint health.
Certainly, nutrition is a key to what we've done, absolutely. But performance, we might be looking for athletic performance, but the pet owner is looking for performance too. What does he want? He wants a dog that's going to live a long, healthy life,
Yeah.
minimal problems, health problems. And so, what we learned feeding sled dogs is certainly applicable to anybody that owns a dog, right? I liken it to, I always tell people it's, if you're going to test gasoline, do you test it with the little old lady that only drives her car to church on the weekends? Or you put it through a NASCAR, right? I mean,
Yes. Yes. Or even someone who's got a horrible commute and sits in traffic at a standstill for an hour each way, each day. Talk, just because of my own personal curiosity, talk about the cattle dog you have in the background who is a dock diver. Can you talk about going to a different kind of dog and a different kind of pursuit? Because a
well,
lot of us could do dock diving. None of us can do what you did, I don't believe.
we've actually had it's Kai is an Australian cattle dog, and
Yep.
they're also known as a blue heeler, right? And
Right.
so many
Yes.
people will remember they see that the cartoon Bluey. That's what Kai is, and so we've actually had cattle dogs. We've had at least one in the house for probably the last at least the last 40 years. And we
Wow.
actually got into them in Alaska because, as I mentioned about moose on the dog trail, our friends up there would take a cattle dog out on the back of a snow machine and turn them loose on the moose. And the cattle dog would start herding the moose away from the dog trail. Finally,
Uh,
the moose would give up. And so we've always had them. And they're always great to have around. If our sled dog puppies weren't listening, you'd send a healer out to bring them back. And they'd come running with their tail between their legs. They're amazing dogs. I will first tell you they're not for everybody because what I tell people is they've been genetically bred to bully something 40 times its size.
isn't that interesting? Yes.
They're incredibly intelligent. They're incredibly alone. They're incredibly loyal, but
Yes.
also very strong-willed. And so they're not a dog for everybody. And so Kai, when he was a little 8-week-old puppy, started jumping in our pool. I had never had one that
Darn.
liked the water, and Kai was just, you couldn't keep him out of the pool. And when he's 8 weeks old, it's cute. But when he's a
Right.
year and a half old, and you let him out at 10:30 at night to pee, and you hear splash, now you got to deal with a wet dog.
I had no idea that he had that a dog could have that passion from babyhood.
Yeah, I mean, he's always wanted to be in the water, and we've never had another one. And so I kept, and he's got an incredible drive.
Yeah.
He Cattle dogs have an incredible drive. And the other thing is they need a job. In anything, he'll bring anything back to you. And he
Yep.
loves water. So I thought, let's combine them. So I used to sit by the pool and throw the bumper, and he kept jumping farther and farther. And I said, I think I'm going to try one of these. I had seen dock diving on TV. I'd never
Me
been.
too. Yeah.
I thought, I'm going to try this. So I found one at a county fair up in New York.
Exactly. Yep.
I went up there, but at least I was smart enough. I didn't wear any Annamaet bling. If he didn't jump, I didn't want people to
Not a
associate.
good advertisement.
And actually, the first time he didn't because he's up on a dock. There's
Yes.
crowds. There's all
Noise.
crowds. And so I put him on a sit, stay, walk to the end, release him. He comes to the end, puts on the brakes.
Did
Gone.
he? Oh, because it didn't look at all like
Yeah,
a swimming
it made
pool.
him nervous. So then I had 2 practice jumps. So I took him back, and this time I got him all jacked up, and he was so focused on his bumper. I ran with him, and I literally just dropped the bumper in the water. And I don't even know if he knew, but before he knew it, he was in the pool to get him. And then he came out, and by then he said, "Oh, okay, this isn't so bad." So his first jump, I just threw it probably 4 feet, and he jumped, and then he jumped farther. He ended up winning the event that night.
I'll be darned. I just saw it myself at a dog show and I didn't know what to expect. But it's
Right.
on a huge raised platform with this kind of walkway that's built into it. And then it's a big, huge pool, but it's beneath the walkway, which is raised above it, or the runway, we should call it.
Yep.
So, and there were dogs that clearly, and they were mostly border collies, some lab type dogs, but it seemed like the border collie is the go-to dog, whether it's fly ball or agility. Their drive is off the chart, especially the most driven ones. It looks like they can barely contain themselves ever.
The top dock diving dogs actually are Belgian Malinois and Whippets.
Really?
Whippets are so fast.
And they like the water?
Well, some of them do. So actually, somebody started to crossbreed. Now I think this is crazy. They're crossbreeding Malinois and Whippets.
That's creepy.
And you know what they're calling them? This is
No,
clever.
cricket.
Calling
What are
them whippersnappers.
That's actually a very funny name. And they did it just so they could have a fast dock diving dog
Combining the speed of the Whippet with the drive of the Malinois,
and
right?
maybe a little bit of hair.
Yeah. But the Malinois and certainly labs are great. We don't,
Right, they're heavier dogs. They're
we
just
don't,
so much heavier.
yeah. And so
Well,
somebody asked me, so what's the difference between training a sled dog and training a dock diving dog? I said about 80 degrees.
oh, that's great. That's so great. Rob, we've run out of time. This book is seriously one of the most delightful adventures I've ever been on. It's called Until the Last Dog, One Man's Lifelong Journey to Alaska with His Dogs, a memoir. Rob Downey, you're amazing. Keep up all the good work. And that is some really amazing news stories. I think you're going to have to write a second memoir. It has been an absolute delight to talk to you. Thank you so much.
I'm honored to be here and thank you so much.